My name is Alara Vance. I am 31 years old and my life is woven from thread. Not metaphorically, but literally. I own a small artisan shop in Seaglass Bay called the Gilded Thimble, a haven of handcrafted textiles, woven tapestries, and bespoke clothing made from natural fibers. The town itself feels like it was spun from a gentle dream, a knot of cobblestone streets nestled against a coastline that exhales mist and the scent of salt. My shop, with its wide, sea-green door and windows full of soft light, is the quiet heart of my world. I build it not with a sudden windfall or a burst of audacious risk, but slowly, patiently, thread by thread, just as I weave the shawls that hang in my display. Growing up here, in a small house that always smelled of my mother's baking and my father's wood polish, I was the quiet observer. My younger sister, Clara, was the flame, bright, wild, and eager for the world's attention. While she filled her teenage years with the laughter of crowded parties and the fleeting drama of high school romance, I found my solace in solitude and creation. I saved the money from my after-school job at the local library, not for a car or for clothes, but for a loom I'd seen in a catalog, a beautiful instrument of maple and brass that promised to turn my daydreams into tangible art. After studying textile design in a city that felt too loud and too gray, I returned to Seaglass Bay with a modest degree, a deep well of inspiration, and a fierce, quiet determination. I spent 3 years working as a seamstress for a local tailor, honing my craft, living in a tiny apartment above a bakery where the scent of rising bread was my constant companion. I saved every spare dollar, my dream of the Gilded Thimble taking shape in worn notebooks filled with sketches and fabric swatches. I opened my doors with a little over $7,000 and a heart more full of hope than certainty. The first years were a lesson in endurance. They were woven with 18-hour days, dinners of soup and toast, and the constant, humming anxiety of a business clinging to life. Every penny earned was a thread I carefully wove back into the shop. I lived a life of deliberate simplicity so that my dream could flourish. Then, the fabric of our own small family was torn. A patch of black ice on a winter road, a single, devastating moment, and our parents were gone. The grief was a physical weight, a shroud that muted the colors of the world. I anchored myself to my work, finding a strange comfort in the repetitive, meditative rhythm of the loom. The steady clack and pull of the shuttle was a heartbeat when my own felt faint. Clara, unmoored, drifted. She dropped out of her community college program and moved through a series of unfulfilling jobs, her inner light dimming with each one. When our parents' estate was settled, we each received a modest inheritance of $50,000. It felt like a sacred trust, the last tangible piece of our parents' love and hard work. I invested every cent into my business, securing the future of the Gilded Thimble. Clara met Julian. She met him at a wellness retreat, a place promising clarity and purpose. He was a lifestyle architect, a man who spoke in calming, resonant tones about manifesting destiny and vibrational alignment. I disliked him from the moment I met him. He had kind eyes that didn't quite reach the rest of his face, a smile that seemed practiced, and a way of touching Clara's arm that felt more like an act of ownership than affection. "Your sister's little shop is lovely," he'd said to me at their small, hurried wedding a few months later, his voice smooth as polished stone. "A wonderful creative outlet. But true abundance flows from mindset, not just hard work." Julian's presence was like a subtle, pervasive dye, slowly changing the color of everything around him. And Clara, she changed the most. The vibrant flame I knew flickered and shrank. She grew quieter, her opinions prefaced with, "Well, Julian thinks." She began to dress in the muted, flowing linens he favored, and her laughter, when it came, was a pale echo of its former warmth. She stopped calling me just to chat. Our conversations became brief, surface-level exchanges, her eyes always seeming to search for something over my shoulder. Then came the invitation to Whispering Pines, the small, rustic cottage on Silver Lake that had been in our family for 3 generations. It was the site of our happiest childhood memories of catching fireflies in mason jars and learning to skip stones across the water's placid surface. The occasion was a loosely defined family get-together, a chance to reconnect. I was hesitant, but the timing felt serendipitous. After years of relentless work, I had just been approved for a small business loan that, combined with my own savings, gave me exactly $95,000. It was the precise amount I needed to purchase the small studio space behind my shop, a beautiful, light-filled room where I could install more looms and finally begin hosting the weaving workshops I dreamed of for years. The money sat in my account, a silent, shimmering promise of the future. I didn't know that the people I was going to see, the people bound to me by blood and memory, were already thinking of that future as their own. I drove up to Whispering Pines on a Friday afternoon in late September, the air crisp with the promise of autumn. The winding road was canopied with trees just beginning to blush with color, and a sense of gentle optimism settled in my chest. The expansion of the gilded thimble felt like the culmination of everything I had worked for, a testament to the quiet strength I had nurtured within myself. My Aunt Celia met me on the porch, her warm hug a familiar comfort. She was my mother's sister, a woman with a gardener's hands and a kind, perceptive gaze. "Alara, darling, it's so good to see you." She smiled, but her eyes held a flicker of concern. "Clara and Julian arrived this morning. Just be prepared." I knew what she meant. Through the screen door, I could hear Julian's voice, a low, confident hum as he held court in the living room. He was talking about a new, holistic investment opportunity, something involving ethically sourced crystals from a remote mountain, promising returns that were not just financial, but spiritual. Clara greeted me with a hug that felt both desperate and fleeting. "Alara, you made it." Her voice had a strained brightness. She looked thin, the soft-hued linen dress hanging loosely on her frame. Her eyes started to Julian for a fraction of a second, a silent, reflexive check-in. "The artisan herself graces us with her presence," Julian announced, raising a glass of kombucha. He didn't get up. "Still managing to sell those charming little cloths of yours?" The condescension was veiled, as always, in a layer of benevolent curiosity. I gave him a small, tight smile. "Business is good, actually. I'm expanding. I'm buying the studio space behind the shop." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes sharpened. "Oh? In this economy? That's a bold move. You must have a very high tolerance for risk." Later that evening, after a dinner where Julian steered every conversation back to his own philosophies on wealth and enlightenment, I retreated to the small bedroom that had always been mine. The familiar scent of cedar and old books filled the air. I needed a few moments of quiet to review the final purchase agreement for the studio before emailing it to my lawyer. I opened my laptop and felt an immediate, prickling sense of unease. It was a subtle wrongness. The charging cord, which I always looped neatly, was haphazardly plugged in, and the laptop itself was shifted a few inches to the left of where I'd left it. My heart began to beat a little faster. It was nothing, I told myself. Someone probably just needed to use the outlet. But the feeling persisted, a cold whisper of intuition. I opened my web browser. The history was clear, too clear, as if it had been deliberately wiped. Then I saw it. A small, automated email notification from my bank security system, sent less than an hour ago, while I was downstairs helping Celia with the dishes. The subject line read, "Security alert. A recent login attempt to your account was blocked." A chill traced its way down my spine. Someone in this house, someone who had been in this very room, had tried to access my bank account. My mind replayed the evening. Julian, excusing himself to take an important call. Clara, nervously tidying up around him. With trembling fingers, I immediately changed all my passwords, enabled the strictest two-factor authentication available, and logged out of all devices. I tucked the laptop into my bag and zipped it shut, but the knot of dread in my stomach remained, tight and cold. I woke the next morning to the sound of birdsong and a sense of foreboding. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, that my precautions had worked. It was then that my phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from my commercial landlord, a kind, elderly man named Mr. Henderson. "Good morning, Alara. Just a heads up, the wire transfer for the studio deposit was just declined. The bank cited insufficient funds. Hope everything is okay." The words blurred. Insufficient funds. It wasn't possible. I scrambled to open my banking app, my fingers fumbling on the screen. The numbers that loaded felt like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Checking account, $17.42. Savings account, $5.31. Business account, $112.98. It was all gone. Every last cent. A detailed transaction history showed a series of methodical transfers, beginning late last night and ending in the pre-dawn hours, funneling $95,000 into an unfamiliar account. This wasn't a random hack. This was a targeted, deliberate act of theft. It was an act of intimate violation, carried out from inside the walls of this house, by someone who knew I was on the cusp of realizing my dream. And my sister's husband was in the kitchen, calmly pouring himself a cup of coffee as if it were just another beautiful morning at the lake. I walked into the kitchen, my phone clutched in my hand like a piece of evidence. The cheerful morning chatter faltered and died as everyone saw my face. I must have been sheet white. "My money," I said, my voice a hollow whisper. "It's gone." Aunt Celia was at my side in an instant. "What do you mean, gone?" I held up my phone, my hand shaking so badly the screen was hard to read. "All of it. $95,000. Transferred out of my accounts overnight." A collective gasp went through the room. My Uncle Robert stood up, his face grim. Only two people remained perfectly still: Clara, whose gaze was fixed on the swirling patterns in her coffee cup, and Julian, who stood leaning against the counter, his arms crossed, an expression of detached curiosity on his face. "Did you call the bank?" Celia asked softly. "Just now. On my way downstairs." I put the phone on speaker and redialed, my movements stiff and automatic. The bank's fraud specialist was professional, her voice maddeningly calm. "Yes, Ms. Vance, I have the records here. A series of 5 transfers were initiated at 11:42 p.m. last night, with the final one completing at 4:15 a.m. The transfers were all authorized from a recognized device logged into your home Wi-Fi network here at the lake house." A heavy silence fell over the kitchen. The specialist continued, her words landing like small, sharp stones. "Furthermore, your security questions were answered correctly on the first attempt." The implication was suffocating. This wasn't just theft, it was a profound betrayal. It was someone who knew me. Someone who knew my mother's maiden name, the name of my first pet, the street I grew up on. My gaze snapped to Julian. His serene mask was still in place, but I saw a flicker of something in his eyes, not guilt, but a cold, reptilian satisfaction. "You were in my room yesterday," I said, my voice gaining a shard of strength. "You were near my laptop." Clara's head shot up, her eyes wide with panic. "Alara, no. You can't think. Are you suggesting I had something to do with this?" Julian interrupted, his tone one of deep, performative hurt. "Alara, you're clearly in a state of distress. It's more likely a mistake with your business partner, or perhaps you mismanaged the funds. Sometimes, when we operate from a place of scarcity, the universe reflects that back to us." The sheer audacity of his spiritual gaslighting was breathtaking. "Then it shouldn't be a problem for you to show us your bank records," I challenged, my voice low and steady. "Show us the balance of this abundant universe you're so in tune with." His serene expression tightened almost imperceptibly at the edges. "I have no obligation to prove my financial purity to you." "No," I said, taking a step closer. "But an innocent person would be outraged on my behalf. An innocent person would be helping me find answers. You're just watching." Clara's hands were trembling, her knuckles white as she gripped her mug. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Julian moved to her side, placing a proprietary hand on the small of her back, a gesture that was both a comfort and a warning. And then he said it. The words dropped into the stunned silence of the room, devoid of any pretense, cold and absolute. "We needed it more than you." The room seemed to tilt. Aunt Celia let out a choked cry. Uncle Robert swore under his breath. But I didn't raise my voice. A strange, glacial calm settled over me. The grief and panic receded, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about a fundamental violation of trust, family, and decency. It was about my sister, trapped in a web of his making. I turned and walked calmly toward my bag, which I'd left by the door. "Then I hope you're prepared for the consequences," I said, my voice even. The moment my fingers closed around my phone to call the police, Julian's composure finally broke. He lunged across the room, his face contorted in a snarl of fury. "You will not involve them," he barked, his hand reaching to grab my wrist. Uncle Robert, a gentle man who I had never seen raise his voice, moved with surprising speed, stepping directly between us. "You back off right now, Julian." Aunt Celia pulled me behind her, creating a protective barrier. Clara flinched, her face a mask of pure terror. She wasn't just afraid of the consequences, she was afraid of him. I looked past them, directly at my sister. "Clara," I said, my voice softening. "Tell me what's happening. Please." Her mouth opened, a silent plea, but Julian's voice cut through the air like a whip. "We're leaving. Clara, get your things. This family is toxic." "You're not going anywhere," I stated, the steel returning to my voice. "Not until my money is returned." or I will press charges for everything I possibly can." Julian laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that bore no resemblance to his usual placid tones. "Good luck with that. The money is already gone. Moved through a dozen accounts. It's buried so deep you'll never see it again. It's just energy, Alara. You should learn to let it go." It was then that a firm, authoritative knock echoed from the front door. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension in the room like a blade. We all froze. After a moment, Uncle Robert opened it to reveal a woman in a smart blazer and a uniformed state trooper standing behind her. "Good morning," the woman said, her eyes scanning the room before settling on me. She had a calm, no-nonsense air about her. "I'm Detective Morales. Is there an Alara Vance here?" I nodded, feeling a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching a scene unfold from a distance. "We were alerted by your bank's cybersecurity division regarding some highly irregular activity. They flagged the transfers as potentially coercive and initiated a trace." Julian went visibly pale, his mask of spiritual superiority crumbling into dust. "It's a misunderstanding," he stammered. "A family matter." Detective Morales ignored him, her focus still on me. "Ms. Vance, before this trip, did you have any reason to be concerned about your online security?" The question unlocked the final piece. The quiet precaution I had taken. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and strong. "I had a minor security breach on my shop's website a few months ago. My IT consultant installed comprehensive security software on my laptop. He called it a digital bodyguard." I walked over to my bag, retrieved my laptop, and opened it on the kitchen table. "It does more than just block unauthorized logins. It documents them." I turned the screen toward the detective. "It takes a photo using the webcam during any failed or successful login attempt. It logs keystrokes for password entries. It records screen activity and matches it with the IP address and device ID." I clicked a few keys and a file opened. There, clear as day, was a series of time-stamped images. The first few showed my own face as I logged in. But the ones from 11:39 p.m. last night showed Julian, his face illuminated by the screen's glow, his brow furrowed in concentration as he leaned over my keyboard in the guest bedroom. "Here," I said, my voice steady as I pointed to the logs, "are the records of him systematically accessing my accounts, answering my security questions, and initiating the transfers. It's all here." Julian's face was a ruin. The mask was gone, revealing the petty, desperate man underneath. "She set me up. This is entrapment." "No, Julian," I said quietly, looking at him for the last time. "I just protected myself. You are the one who walked into the trap you built." As the trooper stepped forward to place him in handcuffs, Julian turned his venom on the one person he had left to control. "You think you're better off without me, Clara?" he spat, his voice raw with fury. "You're nothing. You'll come crawling back." For a moment, Clara shrank back, the old fear clouding her eyes. Then, something shifted. A flicker of the old flame, the one I thought had been extinguished, ignited within her. She took a single step forward, her chin lifted, her voice trembling but resolute. "I was nothing to you," she said, her words clear and ringing in the quiet room. "Without you, I can finally find out who I am again." It was the bravest thing I had ever heard her say. Detective Morales gave me a small, reassuring nod. With this level of digital evidence, recovering the funds is highly likely. And more importantly, Ms. Vance, he won't be able to do this to anyone else. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I took a deep, shuddering breath and let it out. The knot of dread in my stomach began to loosen, thread by thread. 2 months later, I stood in the middle of my new workshop. The afternoon sun streamed through the large, clean panes of glass, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air and casting a warm glow on the 2 beautiful new maple looms that stood waiting. The gilded thimble had not only survived, it was poised to grow. The bank, aided by the undeniable evidence, had recovered 97% of the stolen funds within weeks. The rest was covered by their fraud protection insurance. But the money was never the most important thing I got back. The most important thing was my sister. Clara moved in with me, into the small guest room that overlooks a garden of lavender and rosemary. She filed for divorce and, with my encouragement, enrolled in a local pottery class. The shadows under her eyes have begun to fade. The tentative, haunted look has been replaced by a quiet curiosity. She bakes now, filling my small home with the scent of cinnamon and lemon, the way our mother used to. She is slowly, carefully rebuilding herself from the inside out. Last night, as we were chopping vegetables for soup, side by side in my kitchen, she looked at me, her eyes clear for the first time in years. "You were so brave, Alara," she said softly. "You built this beautiful, strong life for yourself and you didn't let anyone tear it down. I want to learn how to be brave like that. I want to build something that's just for me. And I know that she will." Julian pleaded guilty to grand larceny, wire fraud, and identity theft. He is facing a significant prison sentence. His power, built on a foundation of lies and manipulation, dissolved the moment Clara found her voice and told him she was no longer afraid. Last weekend, Clara and I drove back to Whispering Pines. Not for a family gathering, but for a quiet reclamation. We aired out the rooms, polished the old wooden furniture, and sat on the dock, watching the water ripple in the gentle breeze. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't need to. We were creating a new memory in its place, one of peace and resilience. The cottage no longer felt like the scene of a crime, but a sanctuary once more. Family is not an unbreakable bond that gives others the right to break you. True family is a sacred space, a loom on which you are safe to weave your own life. Sometimes, protecting that space means cutting a thread that has become toxic, no matter how closely it was once woven into your own. It requires a quiet courage to set boundaries, to trust your intuition, and to believe, above all else, that you are worthy of protecting.